Press record. Great. So let me welcome you. So good morning, good afternoon, good day. Welcome to this session of the 33rd BAPT conference, and the third one that we've done online. The conference title is The New Normal, People Type and the Post-Pandemic World. My name is Jerry Gilpin and I'm on the board of the BAPT. And it's my pleasure to welcome you this afternoon to Greg and Christy's session on navigating change. So Greg is well known to many people in the type community, as I think, as an author and consultant and professor and speaker, MBTI practitioner over many years. I've got one of his books, which I'm going to wave at you, which is Making a Difference by Being Yourself, which if you don't get anything else, the title is fantastic. It's a lovely book full of great worked examples of people's experience. And his main areas of interest have been leadership, teams, personality, and change, which is the focus for today. It's also great that we have extra value today because Christy's come to present with him. So Christy is a professional facilitator with both corporate and community teams globally, very experienced using MBTI, and a long-time collaborator with Greg, as I was just hearing. So particularly working, I think, with global teams. So those cultural differences around type, particularly interesting, and maybe something you can observe through the BAPT conference as we've gone global in the last couple of years, Christy. So without more ado, then, Greg, over to you, and to you, Christy. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Jerry. Let's see if I can make my screen change. There we go. So the topic today is navigating change, but by change we mean individual, personal change, professional change, and organizational change. But we're going to spend time taking a look at, does personality type, your MBTI preferences, influence the way you navigate change? A little more background in terms of myself. I have a very strange background, actually. I started out to go to college to become a basketball coach and math teacher, and screwed up along the way. I became a psychologist instead. And then once I graduated, I was on my way to graduate school and I started getting cold feet. And so I took a job at Dodge Warren Truck Assembly in Detroit. And I was in the pit underneath the assembly line, spray painting what felt like the bottom of every truck in the world as it went overhead. However, I ended up getting fired 4 times in a few months. And so my career there was going nowhere. And school started looking a lot better. And I was blessed. I'm lucky. I'm so lucky. I got accepted in the program at Michigan State University in industrial organizational psychology. And what I loved about the program is it trains you to become a quote unquote scientist practitioner. So we were trained very rigorously in quantitative methods and to empirically test what we know about human behavior, especially human behavior in the workplace. But we were also expected to be in the field, and we were supervised both in terms of, in my case, I was both a clinical psych PhD candidate as well as an industrial organizational psych candidate. And so I had I was expected to and loved the opportunity to practice, not just research what we were discovering about type. And I've been blessed to be with over 250 different organizations, helping them wrestle with change, and been a professor at a few different universities and whatnot. And as Jerry shamelessly plugged for me, Making a Difference by Being Yourself is one of my favorite books I wrote. And also I've written books on teams and on leadership as well. And we're going to provide a whole lot of this material on a website that we'll share with you as well. Got 50 years of experience to share, and Christy and I have reviewed the literature, and Christy's got a wealth of experience as well in terms of that. And Christy, do you want to say anything more about yourself?
Just that I won't give quite my whole history, but I was on faculty at Michigan State University for about 20 years. Did a lot of work with community groups, corporate groups, a lot around strategic planning and team building, and really found that the Myers-Briggs instrument was so helpful in lots of different contexts. And right now I'm spending a lot of time looking at it from the perspective of the stress that change causes in people's lives and how type might influence their reactions to that stress. So it's kind of, not a great time for the planet in terms of pandemics and things, but it's a great time to get into some really interesting topics, I think, between type and change.
Terrific. Okay. Well, change has become the new normal, hasn't it? It's coming from every direction, and whether we want it or not, it's our key to survival, and it's our key to growth and development as well. How do you navigate change? Can we hear from one or two of you before we start presenting a pathway for change? Do any of the three of you, or any of you, willing to share what do you notice about yourself as you try to navigate change?
I noticed that was
Deborah, I
the
see you unmuted.
only extrovert in the group. So far, I find myself being the first to speak. There's a surprise. It's a great question, and I think, as you would perhaps anticipate, I like to talk through the practical things with other people. So what are the practical implications, the impact on us as individuals? How can we use what we already know to build forward? And how can I keep track of my progress? So, I guess that's all fairly classic. I've worked a lot since I started my career in, I did law, and then I went into industrial relations in the 1970s, early 80s, when trade unionism was very strong in the UK. And I worked for Kodak, Eastman Kodak, at the point where I think we were shutting down factories as digital hit and Kodak was left behind. So I learned a lot of things about change at that time, mainly how unsuited I was really to arguing a lot with trade unionists, but also how there ought to really be a way forward to help people to manage some of the very significant changes that come when you've spent most of your career, and your family spent most of their career working for one company, which was often the case in the place where they processed your slides and photographs. Those were the days. So that taught me a lot about that, and I think as a result I learned some of the things about my own preferences and trying to manage conflict, which is something that I've been working increasingly on as I get older, and realize that actually there is a place for conflict in working things through in change. So yes, for me, it's about practical implications for people, thinking forward, having a plan, but also increasingly recognizing the need to be flexible in navigating.
I appreciate you sharing that, and you'll see that our model kind of reflects some of the pathways that you took as you wrestled with change. We do believe that type does have some has some influence in terms of how we go about the different points in our journey in change. And boy, haven't we been hit with a lot of change lately? I mean, there's COVID. And how that's just had an impact on virtually everybody on the planet. Brexit, I'm sure that's created all kinds of interesting phenomenon for y'all, and the changes that's brought about. There's been social justice movements, Black Lives Matter, the Me Too movement, other things that really have gotten people questioning the way we go about things. Then there's climate change too. I mean, our globe is being threatened. We've got incredible floods and storms and whatnot occurring, and we've got big fires, at least here in the States anyway, and Australia I know has had a lot as well. So climate change is really impacting their technology has changed dramatically as well. And the way we live our lives, we live them on our phones. We live them through all kinds of other technology. And here we are in a conference, and we're using Zoom in this case. And there's other virtual conference mechanisms that we connect people. And as Jerry was mentioning to us earlier, in some ways helped us become more of an international community as well. There's electric vehicles that are increasingly being utilized, and self-driving vehicles, I think, are probably right around the corner. Social media, hasn't that kind of blown up our world in so many different ways? and sorting out what information is and what false information is, and how everybody needs to understand that what they share ends up getting shared a lot of different kinds of ways. Then we've got this war in the Ukraine, the invasion of Ukraine, and all the disruption that's creating, and all the concerns it's creating, not just in Ukraine itself, but globally, and our concerns about where is this leading us, and what's that going to have as an impact in there. And the world of work has sure changed, eh? Working from home, and at least in the States, we've had this incredible number of people that have quit their jobs, and now they're starting to move into other kinds of jobs and whatnot. A movement in terms of the world of work and how work gets set up is changed dramatically as well. So we find that all of these kinds of changes are impacting us in many ways, and each of us has probably experienced some professional changes, but also personal changes. I mean, as you were isolated due to COVID, you perhaps did more self-reflection, or you really got to know your family a lot more, and either love them a lot more, or can't really know how to trigger their buttons now, even better than you did before. So we've gone through personal changes, health changes, other kinds of changes as well. Like I said, people have been changing jobs and professions, and organizations have had to find different ways to operate as a result of the changes that have happened. So we're going to share with you what we've learned about change, both through experience as well as through a thorough review of the literature. And you're welcome to contact us after this as well. And we've made a bunch of materials available on a website, Teams Leadership Change. Feel free to use them as you see fit. This is the GPS map that we're going to provide you over the next 45 minutes or so. And the 7 P's of change, we'll go over them one at a time. And as we explain them afterwards, we'll speculate how time might influence navigation of that particular phase of the change effort. The first is provocation. In case you don't realize it, most adults actually don't change unless they're provoked. Most adults need to be provoked in order to get out of their comfort zone and to attempt to do other things. Sometimes we'll just push ourselves, but more than likely our lives get disrupted. And we're going, what was that? Look out. We notice something's not quite right. We go, what's going on here? Why is that happening? There might be a change in our internal environment, how we think about things, the people we're close to, or externally, the global changes that I mentioned earlier. All we end up kind of finding out is, hey, we better pay attention. We can't be just totally complacent. Though, to be honest, the most common reaction to a provocation is denial, is dismissal, is saying like, we'll see if that's for real or not. You think type has anything to do with how we react to provocations? We do. I know this slide's a bit busy, but let me highlight a few things on it anyway. And again, all this is available to you through BAPT, as well as it'll be on our website as well. But we've gathered a bunch of stories about people wrestling with change, and some of the things we've discovered, as well as some of the things we'd speculate on, is that these might have a tendency to verbalize more about what's happening, and that they might respond a little more quickly, move to action more quickly. Where introverts are saying, whoa, what's happening? Give me some quiet time. I got to think about this and reflect upon what just happened to them or around them or whatever. People with a preference for sensing might notice the details of what the provocation was, and they may hear the actual words that people said and take things a little more literally, or see actions a little more literally. Where people with a preference for intuition might see the provocation, feel the provocation, experience the provocation, and immediately link it to other things going on in their lives, and take maybe a more conceptual view of what the provocation is all about. People with a preference for thinking might have a tendency to critique. That's not quite right. They may develop some arguments about why this should or shouldn't be happening. They will critique and try to figure out objectively what really is truly happening. Where feeling types might have a little more of a feeling reaction, more of an emotional reaction, but especially also what the reaction may be on relationships that are near and dear to them, or values that may be near and dear to them, and who else might be impacted by this provocation. People with a preference for judging might try to quickly dismiss the provocation or look for a quick fix to maintain the status quo. People with a preference for perceiving might feel the provocation and they say, well, that's bad, but it's also good. It's the pros and cons of it might be a little more interesting to them, and they may postpone actually dealing with it as they think through these pros and cons. So we speculate that type might influence how you go through this first stage, but provocation's very important in order for the change process to succeed. Changes that we are just a good idea and a good intention rarely kind of go to fruition. They can, but they don't very often unless there's a provocation. There's got to be a need for change. Then we're advocating that instead of jumping into action, instead of jumping into what do you want to see happen, instead of coming up with a plan, look back. Your experience is very valuable. Use that experience. Your experience with type is going to be very valuable too. And your knowledge of it might help you navigate the change as well as help others navigate the change as well. You know, does this provocation feel familiar? If I've been through something like this before, and even if this provocation has some unique characteristics, maybe you want to reflect back on how have I dealt with change before in general. It's time to review your past, respect it, learn from it, and how you've dealt with either positive or negative provocations. And by the way, provocations can be very positive. It could be opportunity. You may win the lottery. You might find the love of your life, you know, all kinds of other things that might disrupt your life. And so it may be a positive provocation, if you will, or it could be a threat to your routine, to your understanding of yourself and of your situations. So we're going to get you to have to think about how do you let go of the past, but not let go of the memories, and especially of the lessons you've learned, those valuable lessons you've learned from the experience of those provocations. Again, we speculate that type might influence how you navigate this second phase of our change model. Extroverts might cut reflection down to a minimum and really kind of be that prone to action sort of thing. But they'll bring a lot of energy to this phase, you know, and maybe get energized as they think back to other times that they've dealt with change. Where people with a preference for introversion will experience it and reflect back, but they may make it a little more idiosyncratic, how they personally dealt with that change in the past, and what that can teach them about how they may want to go about creating a change in the current situation. And they may enjoy the idea of, hey, I need to pause and reflect upon what's happening before acting. People with a preference for sensing may focus too much on the specific details of the past events. They may overemphasize a piece of it and really react to exactly what so-and-so said and how dare they say blah, blah, and not hear the whole paragraph of what else they had to say. They may also just want to kind of honor the details of the past more so than other types. People with a preference for intuition may kind of overgeneralize this provocation other things. On the one extreme, maybe leading into a conspiracy theory about why the world's out to get them, or more just tie it to other kinds of events and maybe a little bit try to pigeonhole it into other experiences that may or may not be germane to the current situations. But they might not get hung up on a key word or two by the provocation or the provoker and look at the general picture. Thinking types might kind of coldly take a look at their past and try to impersonally figure out what's there to be learned about it. It might be uncomfortable, but let's systematically analyze what's the connection between past experiences and what I'm experiencing now. And people with a preference for feeling may emphasize keeping relationships together. How's this going to disrupt our work group? How's this going to disrupt our family? And they may find themselves also taking a look at how's this going to change my world that threatens my values, what I really care about, what I really believe in. People with a preference for judging might put a structure to examining the past, more orderly and systematic approach to reviewing their past, and take a look at setting a deadline. How long do I want to reflect on this before I start moving forward? And they might not tolerate the ambiguities of the situation quite as much as other types. People with a preference for perceiving might live a little better with the uncertainties of the situation. They may see both sides of it, of the issue, but that may mean they'll equivocate too long about what they think about it, what they feel about it, and not push to the next reality that they need to face. The third one we'd like to present before we get you involved in thinking about how you deal with change is it's time to look at your current situation. Look in the mirror. What do you see? What's your current realities? What's really going on here? From Detroit, what's going on? I'm hearing Marvin Gaye already singing in the background. The idea of let's take an honest look at what's really going on around here, and also maybe figure out what of this is just a symptom of a smaller situation, and what is it a root cause of a larger issue that we may need to address. It's time to inventory your strengths, your weaknesses. What strengths do I have that I honestly own that might be helpful in dealing with this situation? And knowing myself, I've got some flaws, and how those may be going to create some pitfalls for me. And then you got to decide how to gather data about yourself. Should you just do it yourself, or should you involve others? Should you literally gather data, or should you do this through self-reflection? How might you want to take a look at yourself? And what do you need to do to survive in the short run? Again, we think type has an influence here. We think extroverts might be a little more prone to seek data from others about themselves and tell me, what am I like when I'm at my best? What do you think is going on with me that might be a problem in this situation? And they may view their inventory a bit broadly. Introverts, on the other hand, might deeply take a look at themselves and resist some generalizations and share their discoveries about themselves with only a few. Sensing types may want their self-data to be based on facts. What can I document that I know about my strengths, or what I know about my weaknesses, or what I know about the situation? And they may take a little more of a common sense approach to taking this inventory of themselves. Intuitive types might want to include all kinds of possibilities and speculations. And the real good news is they may look for patterns amongst these things that they are thinking about themselves and feeling about themselves and discovering about themselves. However, they may ignore some of the facts that don't seem to fit their original kind of conception of what they are and what the situation's about. Thinking types might want to apply logic and objectivity to it. What's for real here? What's actual happening here? And as they go it, especially if they involve others, they may choose truth over tact. And that gets to the heart of it, but may also create a bit of political problems later down the road as people hear what they have to say and they're just trying to be coldly factual about the situation. And what we found is some of the thinking types tend to emphasize the problems more than strengths, what needs to be resolved, as opposed to what are some of the strengths I can build on that'll help me in this situation. Feeling types might emphasize what they like or dislike about the situation, their overall kind of global evaluation of it in terms of likes and dislikes, and really not enjoy the fact that change creates conflict, and they would much rather have harmony. And what can we do to maintain harmony? And that may take the energy out of the change effort for themselves and for others, but also hopefully keep people together as a support network. Judging types might want a more planned and orderly approach, but might find themselves jumping to conclusions. Let's get this over with. Come on, let's decide. And they might want to take what they learn about themselves and compare it to other facts, to other standards, to goals and whatnot. Receiving types want to keep things open-ended. They may feel a bit indecisive about what they really know about themselves. And they may take a little more of a spontaneous approach to understanding themselves. Now we're going to look at, so we've looked at, you got provoked, you reviewed the past, you've inventoried the present. We're suggesting before you take action, hey, figure out where you'd like to head, look forward. What could you look like? What could our organization look like? What do you want to personally look like? What's your preferred future? That's an important word list. We did invent it. Lippitt has a wonderful exercise called the preferred futuring exercise. If you're not familiar with it, we'll put it on our website and make it available for you as well. Because perfectionism is a curse. So we want you to be idealistic, i.e., what could I become? But not set yourself up for failure. Set yourself up to be such a godly superhero that you have no chance of surviving this change, sort of thing. What is your preferred future? What do you want to become? What's your true potential? Where do you want to be going? It's almost like not planning the vacation, but taking a look at the destination brochure and seeing what that place is going to look like once you get there. Again, we think there may be some type implications, and Christy's going to lead us in a exercise to get your ideas of how type preferences might be there. But we've got some suggestions here too, so we'll come back to that if we don't have a group around that. After you've pictured where you'd like to go, that's not enough. Unfortunately, have you ever done this, like New Year's Eve resolutions or New Year's Day resolutions? You kind of picture what you're going to become and what you're going to be and whatnot. Boy, I bet you're better off if you have a plan and prepare yourself to be able to actually operate on that. It's time for a map. What's your plan? What convinces you that change is needed? Too often we get sucked into, well, it would be nice if we blah, 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 blah. All that's good. I don't mean to put that down too much, but it's been shown that more change efforts kind of fail because the road to, what is it? The road to something's paved with good intentions. It's got to be more than just a good intention. It's we got to be convinced that there's a compelling need for change. So what's your itinerary? What is your Google map? What is your GPS direction signal tell you are the steps that you need to take in order to move from your current state to that future state? And what resources are you going to need to get there? How are you going to take those steps, and who else do you need to involve, and what else are you going to need to have in order to be able to take those kinds of steps? Maybe also a time to take a look at how knowledgeable are you about doing step X? And maybe you need some training and development opportunities or some self-growth opportunities before you're going to be able to truly take on that particular step. So what do you need to know how to do, and how can you gain that knowledge or gain those skills in order to be successful with that step? And who are you going to let know that you're taking these steps, that you're on a plan to make something? Research has shown, for instance, again, New Year's Day resolutions or Lenten plans, if you produce a Lenten plan, if you announce your plan to others, you're a little more likely to actually follow it through. So in addition to getting their help and collaboration, hopefully, and consult with them on how to go about it, it also puts a little pressure on you to make sure that you do go forward. Again, we're going to be asking you your ideas of how type might show up as you go about the planning and preparation stage. But let me finish the model here, and then we'll have Christy lead us in a breakout. Since we may be all here in the room, breakout right here in the room in terms of some type implications of it. Sorry, most times we run out of gas. We get started, we're all fired up, we're all upset, we decide, oh man, oh, and then we get excited about the stream, about what we could become. And then we come up with this wonderful plan, and there's all kinds of planning tools now that we can use. And it looks real on paper, but unfortunately, sometimes it's on paper. And so we need to look at where we're going. We have to really, again, have that firmly in our mind, why we can't do business as usual. Why you have to, why do you want to become what you've described as your future state, and why you can't currently remain in the same way, the same old. And make sure that you're learning along the way. For a lot of people, that's going to be a major motivation factor in terms of going forward with the plan for change. How will you use what you learn? Let's warn you, and as if you didn't already know, this transition stage, and that's what this is, we're talking about really here, is really a awkward stage. William Bridges, I think, best described it, sort of thing. In fact, one of his quotes is, it's the nowhere between two somewheres. We know where we used to be, we know where we want to be, but we're stuck in the middle of that. And we currently, boy, it just feels weird to do it this way. And we can't just go on automatic pilot. We really have to kind of be aware of what we're doing and how we're feeling and how we're reacting to others. We need to solve some problems, probably, some obstacles in the road in order to move forward. But we're going to need some reinforcement too if we're going to keep moving forward with our plan. We need to celebrate ourselves. We need to express appreciations to ourselves. We need to treat ourselves for staying on the plan. Likewise, if others are helping us or you're helping others change, we need to express appreciation to them too, for them sticking their necks out and taking those baby steps as they start moving forward on the change. But this other side of this, and this is a tougher one for most people, we got to hold ourselves and others accountable. There's got to be some discipline to it. There's got to be some agreement with yourself or with others. What's going to happen if you fail to take these next steps? Doesn't mean you're a bad person, but it does mean there's consequences. And what should the consequences be if you stray from the path? You may have just discovered you need to go back to the planning stage and redo some of the planning. But if you're just straying because you're running out of gas, you need to find ways to hold yourself accountable to stay on that. Again, we think there's some type implications there. The last phase of our 7P model is the promised land, that we get there. We've become something different. Look what we've become. Witness your new identity. It's almost like you need a new ID card. This is the new Greg Huszco. This is who he's about. This is our business organization. We see this as businesses change their names, for instance, and say what this tells us about what they're all. We're no longer a car company. We're a transportation company, or whatever it is that we've as our new identity. We also need to spend some time consolidating the pieces. Instead of just the piecemeal plan and step-by-step plan, what's those pieces draw together to show us a picture that's on this puzzle? We also suggest it's time to do a reassessment, a pre-post assessment. Some of the things that you did back in the current state sort of thing need to be repeated now and gather data to see if we can confirm we have changed in the ways that we are experiencing ourselves now or our organization now. And we probably will discover that change has become the new normal, that we need to be able to understand that it's just going to generate some more plans for change. Well, again, we think there's some type implications. Christy, can you kind of pick on one of the ones that we didn't share in terms of the 7 Ps here, and unmute the folks and get people to talk about what type implications they think. Which piece should we zero in on first?
All right, sure, I can do that. So I'm gonna pop a screen share up here. So we prepared some discussion guides for breakout rooms. It looks to me like we will have a single breakout room of 4 people, which is perfectly fine. I'll put this discussion guide link up in the chat. but just wanted to give you a quick preview of what it looks like. So for picture, which is one of the phases that Greg didn't get really deeply into as far as type implications, we got this juicy question asking for your perspective on how your type preferences might influence the way that you develop a mission or vision, whichever way you want to look at it. And we've set it up so that it's a Word document, which means that you've got some colored blocks down here that you can simply click in and add the group's notes, your perspectives on that particular phase in answer to that question. We realize that you might not have representation from all of these type dichotomies in the room. That's fine. You don't need to address all 8. If you have a significant other who has a different type than you and you feel like you know it well, feel free to add that. Our plan is to give you about 10 minutes to discuss, have someone in the group record into this document the thoughts that the group has, and then we'll do a quick report out about it. I was thinking we could go one of a couple different ways, either just discussing it as a group or doing breakout, but I'm seeing we've got some introverts in the room, so I'm thinking to honor that, it might be good to send folks off into a breakout room for about those 10 minutes. You don't need to worry about keeping track of time. I'll pop into the chat, kind of counting down for you how much time you have left. If you happen to finish early and feel like, all right, this is all we've got to say about it, you should be able to bring yourself back to the room prior to those 10 minutes being up. If you can't see how to do that, let us know in the chat and we can recall the group, if you will.
Christy, I just wonder whether we might be better off staying together, in fact, because I'm not sure. Yeah, Renee said he'd had to step out, so there was the possibility that we just, Deborah could end up on her own in a group looking at herself, which is lovely, but perhaps not.
I mean, I can talk quite a lot to myself if necessary.
There is Yvonne, so it's lovely to see her. Hi.
Hi, Yvonne.
Hi. So I don't know whether would that be okay if we stayed together. I guess it just made. Hopefully, what we can do is to give Greg a bit of a break, so he's not expected to kind of chip in very much. But I guess the rest of us probably can.
It's good for me.
Yeah,
work for everyone.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, if that's the case, then I'll still put the document. Let's see if I can do this.
If you put it back up, we can all share it then and look at it together, can't we?
Right. I'll also put it in the chat just so that everyone has access to it.
Yeah.
And I will screen share. Looks like then I will be the official secretary of the group. So you all can talk and I can take notes for you if that's the preference. Let's see, I'm gonna take myself off screen there. So can everyone see the document at this point?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. So our key question, think about your type preferences and how they might influence the way that you develop your mission or vision. And as you share thoughts, if you can link it to any of the type preferences, the 8 that we've got there, that'll be helpful for me to record it in the right spot.
Well, I'm happy to chip in because maybe just to get us started. So INTJ overall preferences. So I think for sure my dominant introverted intuition is in charge when I'm looking ahead, and it's almost like a whole load of things fit into looking ahead, all the different possibilities and options and feelings and values, and then suddenly it becomes clear on the horizon. And I know what I need to aim at. I might not know what the first steps are, but then I go to my extroverted thinking and say, okay, so what's the first thing I need to do? And it becomes quite processy at that point, I think. So for me, it's the whole dynamic of everything working together. So the introverted intuition, extroverted thinking.
That's really interesting, Jerry. I'm very envious of that ability to see what the vision or the the future state.
Yeah, but notice what I'm
actually
missing
is.
out. I'm missing out some facts potentially, and actually how other people feel about it. And
Yes, but it must be brilliant to actually know what it looks like. I think from my perspective, I often want to do this in a harmonious way, involving other people, acknowledging and honouring, what people might be feeling, and also people's values. And that doesn't mean other preferences won't be doing that, obviously. But so that often leads me, and I have to then work hard to make sure that I bring the thinking preference balance into that, and considering factors if I stood outside of this. What I think personally, anyway, for me, always more difficult, more challenging. I find this when I work with groups and I'm an individual leadership coach, is people who have a sensing preference, which I do often find this a difficult question. So I remember being interviewed, way back when I was in my 20s, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I wasn't articulate or perhaps wise enough in those days to know that was a pretty daft question to ask me. Or maybe it's a pretty daft question anyway, actually. But for me, that whole future visualization of potential and possibilities is more challenging. And I find that often with some of my, not just sensing preference clients, actually, and maybe change context as part of this, because people just don't know how things are going to be. But it is quite a challenge. It can be quite a challenging question for people if some of the other things aren't in place. And Jerry, you mentioned facts. I think that's one of the things. On a more prosaically, what I also have reflected on recently, having seen a little bit of Susan Cain's work on introversion, is how brainstorming and thinking out loud in groups is so often a very unhelpful way to help people develop their vision and mission. We're working with teams and trying to find a way of getting groups to come up with something, whilst recognizing their need to reflect and think, and then bring people up to speed with their thinking, is also quite interesting. So for me, talking about it and getting options and things is always going to be good. Getting other people's views is always going to be good. Understanding how other people might think about what I'm thinking about doing is helpful. But what I don't have is that very clear, wow, that's what it, in the shower moment that says, I know what it looks like. How wonderful that must be.
How about you, Yvonne?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. So for me, I'm like Deborah. I would lead with extroverted feeling, no question there. Want to make sure everyone's involved, taking into consideration other people's perspectives. For me, though, I think it's that EJ component where I'm going to develop a plan. So for me, I want to get going with something. So I can, pretty quickly come up with my vision. Introverted intuition, it might be way down there, way down the road. But then I want to implement, I want to get a plan in place and I'm also okay with a plan shifting or changing throughout the process, but I like to have something in place to begin with. And that's just, I guess, that decisive component. But I think it was Deborah that was speaking about extroversion. I actually like the brainstorming component in helping with vision and mission and so forth. That could be just a personal perspective as well.
I quite enjoy brainstorming, even with I'm an extremely strong preference for introversion, but I enjoy brainstorming as long as I have time to think on my own first. I don't like getting swamped with everybody else's stuff. But if it's like, okay, we've got 5 minutes, I don't know, write as many post-it notes or whatever as you can on this topic, that's great, because then I've got something to say. I'm not blown off course by what everyone else is doing. So I think introversion can work as long as it's given a bit of introvert space.
Yeah, and some of the tools sorry, Yvonne.
Oh, sorry, Deborah. I was just going to say, and part of, where Deborah and I are seeing extroversion differently here regarding vision and mission might be that sensing and intuition component. I could see that coming into play here. So sorry, Deborah, go ahead.
I was just reflecting, thank you, Jerry's point about giving those with introvert preference a chance to reflect and think, do their good quality thinking first. And some of the tools that you can use, Mural or some of these post-it note apps that you can use on Zoom or Teams calls, I found really quite helpful to get people to assemble their post-its, because normally in person you would of course give people a stack of post-its and that build in that way, but even on Zoom I think it's possible. But it's really interesting, is it not, to be bounced, I suppose, into trying to give the best of yourself of your thinking when you haven't had a chance.
Yeah, similar one to Mural is Miro, which is the one I happen to use, M-I-R-O.
Yeah, that's good too.
And it's been surprising how well, actually, as a result of those tools, teamwork has gone, work with teams for me has gone from having to be face to face to being online. It's worked really well.
Yes.
Sorry, Joe, could you repeat that second tool for me?
M-I-R-O, Miro.
Miro, got it.
As in the artist,
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, that's a bit, sorry, just a slight aside, Christy, stop me if we're getting out of time, but in some of those Zoom or team interactions, first of all, global team, really great to get everybody together on virtually, but also the tools like the polls and the whiteboards that I've found really helped with, where people have different preferences, because there is that degree of individual work which you give people time for. Maybe we just choreograph it differently, perhaps as facilitators. Perhaps that's what helps. So
I noticed we've not got anything in the perceiving box there, which is interesting given that our two presenters both have INTP preferences. But one thing I think I've noticed about perceivers at this point is the desire to keep the options open, so to generate many possibilities. And it feels, in some ways, I always think it feels more costly to a perceiver to make a decision and to decide on a desired future and a plan. And because it's costly, it takes longer. But also, once it's done, I think it's maybe more fixed even than it is for a J, because it just cost me so much to get rid of all those other possibilities to commit to this one thing. So I don't know whether that's.
I really like that, more costly. Yeah, I really like that description. Is it because often you feel like you're resting from them, those other options that they're
and they're not ready to give them. That's right, they're not ready to give those up yet. And it's really, I think exactly. you don't get commitment to change from strong perceiving preference for people unless they've come to that point themselves where they think, that's it. I've got to decide, and I've got to put all those other possibilities away and focus on this.
Interesting.
Perfect.
It's in a way, I mean, it's lots of ways. It's a real shame we haven't got 5 times, 10 times as many people on the call. But it's great in a way. It's good because there's so much to say, even for 3 or 4 of us, isn't there?
Yeah, you do get to have an in-depth, proper conversation about it, which is great.
How are we for time, Christy, with this bit?
I think we're doing all right. So we've only
got 10 minutes left, so maybe we can move on from picturing to the planning thing and just keep it kind of an open thing, as opposed to maybe even recording it on the document, and just have a discussion of it, and people then can refer back to it as they see fit in the PowerPoints we're providing. Is that okay with y'all?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Greg, are you wanting the next discussion guide up then?
I don't think so. I think we'll just look at type let's see. Now I got to get my PowerPoints back up, huh?
That's
exactly.
Oops, well, we don't want to start there again. So you took a look at some.
We're not seeing them yet, Greg.
Type implications for picturing. Oh, you're not seeing it yet?
Not yet.
I need to hit. Do I need to hit?
share screen on the bottom of the Zoom window, and then choose the particular application, the PowerPoint application.
Here we go.
It's looking good. There we are, the promised land. That's what we want.
Well, let's go back a little bit and get your thoughts about how might type influence the way you go out planning and preparing for change. Anyone want to start us out, and we'll also supplement this?
Planning and preparing, I think I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a good thing, but I tend to snap very quickly from my introverted intuition into my extroverted thinking. So I have a single plan quite quickly when I have a vision or horizon. I go very quickly to the plan, and then I can tend to I do sometimes do that far too quickly, so I miss out the option. There might be 5 or 6 different plans, and then am I choosing the best one? No, I'm mainly just choosing the first one.
Okay. Well,
And
as you
just
see on
like
the
it-
screen, we've got some ideas in terms of how type might show up as well. And we found that extroverts might not only move to action, but involve others in it, but not have any secrets about it. And while we're not advocating secrecy, you may leak the change too soon. And I've seen this happen way too often. It spreads rumors throughout, especially if you're doing this in an organizational setting. And a resistance force springs up that you didn't mean to, because it shouldn't be introduced until you've gone through a couple of the preparation stages as well. Introverts might be a little prone to do it a little bit more on their own in terms of planning and not involve others in the planning. Sensing types might end up with a more tactical plan as opposed to a transformational plan, which isn't bad, but it's different. Intuitive types might take a more of a systems view of things and align their linkages and think longer term rather than shorter term. Thinking types might ignore the politics of the situation, and that can create problems again in organizational settings. Feeling types might be really emphasizing the values and beliefs, which will be wonderful about them, but they'll need to get into the practicalities of and that sometimes you can't always, Rolling Stones, now I'm quoting, I guess, huh? You can't always get what you want, but if you try some time, you just might find you get what you need. Judging types might come to conclusions too quickly, but at least hold people accountable and be open to all kinds of things. But we heard from a lot of, especially P's, about the problem of following through. Sounded good at the time, but didn't find the time to do it. Anything else anyone want to talk about in terms of planning and preparing and type implications? Well, remember, it's not enough. You got to stay motivated to stay on the plan. And that we found that type has some implications here. We found one of the things that extroverts reported was a lot of exuberance about, unless it's exuberant, they fall off the plan. They got to keep that energy going. They oftentimes serve as a cheerleader to the change effort, whether cheering themselves on or cheering others on, and that makes a difference above and beyond the details of the situation. We found introverts reporting that they want to try this next step, but they want to rehearse it privately, not in front of others. And they want to see if they can do it first before they have to let others see them taking this next step towards becoming a different kind of person, different kind of event. That sensing types make sure that it's practical and methodical and realistic. And feeling types doing things together. They don't want to do it by themselves. Thinking types say complaining's okay, as long as we keep moving. Complaints just bring out the realities of it. And J's are happy if there's a schedule, and we're keeping track of whether there's a schedule there or not. And P's kind of more adjusting on the fly and seeing how things go. Anyone want to add anything else about type implications for motivation? Okay, then we already did Promised Land. maybe we'll just get into the concluding comments that we'd like you to take from today's presentation, and then again, let you ask any questions that you may have at this point in time. Our final thoughts are, beware of your typical reactions. What do you do when your life's disrupted? Examine that and think about, is that something you have to do? Is that something you choose to do? Reflect on the past. Don't worry about that changes there. The good old days are what we're going to talk about now, 10 years from now, which is hard to believe considering the amount of chaos in the world today. But what's been helpful in terms of past experiences? We're really encouraging you before you get going in terms of your vision and your plan to take an inventory of your strengths and weaknesses, and use the strengths of your personality to make a difference in your approach to change. Make sure that you envision what you want to become before you start planning the steps that you need to take to address the threat or the opportunity. You do need a plan, and those plans need to be specific enough that you know what you're doing when. And you may need to prepare in order to take the steps in that plan. Keep yourself motivated to stay on the plan. What's pulling you? What about that vision is so compelling that it keeps making you want to continue the pathway to change? And what's pushing you? Why do you have to keep doing this? Who else is pushing you? Why you can't have business as usual? And some of those pushes are going to keep you on the plan as well. And a seventh point is that recognize that you're different. It's not going to be perfect. It might not be quite the promised land that you thought it was going to be when you did the envisioning of your future, but don't fall prey to perfectionism. Perfectionism's a curse. Figure out what's better now than it was, and how can I revel in that kind of improvement. What we've tried to do for you is give you a roadmap to change, 7 Ps, 7 phases to deal with change. Feel free to contact us we've got all kinds of tools and exercises and whatnot to wrestle with these 7 Ps. And we're making available a bunch of materials on teams, leadership, and change. We'll be adding a lot more to the change page on that website subsequent to today's session. I see we're down to about the last couple minutes, so I think we'll just throw it open to any questions people have, any comments people have. So feel free to unmute, is that the word? And share any questions or concerns or ideas that you have regarding change, personal, professional, or organizational, and how type might influence your navigation of those changes. We're prepared for that question. Oh, wait a minute, sorry.
While folks are thinking about questions, I also wanted to mention in the chat, I just popped in a link to an online survey where you can add more perspectives on this. We're really interested in your thoughts about type and change. And because we knew this was going to be a fairly short session, we wanted another mechanism. So if, as we've been going through this, you've had some other thoughts, the survey will allow you to share perspectives on any of the dichotomies, some of them, just 1 or 2, or all of them if you want to. And please feel free to share that link with friends or colleagues, anyone else you think might be interested in the topic.
Do you remember that? Thank you, Christy. Yeah, and so it's in a SurveyMonkey format, is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
We'll make it available on the website as well. I'll copy that, and we'll put it up on the session page, so that along with your slides and so on.
Perfect.
I think actually as we've got to 3, I think I'm going to make a formal conclusion, but do go, Deborah, Yvonne, do hang around for a few minutes, because we don't have to go anywhere. But I just want to make sure we get on the recording. Great thanks to Greg and to Christy for all the hard work they put into this. And there's just so much material there. I think all of us who've been here, really benefited from the breadth of that. So thank you so much, and also for making the stuff available online. I was reminded halfway through of something a very ancient philosopher once said, which is, you can never step in the same river twice. And the more you think about that, the truer it gets, and the more that it does just show that that change is the only thing that doesn't change, isn't it? So thank you again to Greg and to Christy, and I'm going to just stop the recording at this point.